Welcome everyone to the Real Walking the 2E Parent Path Talk with Dr. Tasha Oswald. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Happy to be here.
If everyone could please mute, I know it doesn't do that by default. So Real is a nonprofit. We are located in Silicon Valley, and we are helping Silicon Valley twice exceptional students thrive by raising parent and educator awareness and understanding of strategies to address 2E students' needs successfully. We create and curate resources and workshops and programs for educators. And for parents, we organize events such as this one and create online tools that you can share with your educators and learn how to support your 2E children. Just in case you aren't familiar with Twice Exceptional, it is children who have both high abilities and or potential. And at the same time, they also have complex challenges such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, anxiety, and other challenges. And they show up with both simultaneously. And so you can't just serve them in the complex challenge side or just on the strength side. They need support in both. If you visit our website, real2e.org, you can get a lot of information organized by subject, including recordings of previous events, blog posts, articles, and other tools that you might find useful on various topics. Because this is the close of the school year, this is our final evening event. You can find all the previous events that we recorded from earlier this school year youtube.com/real2e or from our website. We do have one more event this summer, our bi-monthly parent support group on July 11th. If you'd like to join our Real Google group, this is the URL. You can also find it on our website. It is local parents asking and answering each other's questions and supporting each other through resources. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and again, there's our YouTube. As I mentioned before, we do educator workshops. So if you'd like to bring Real to your school, we've been doing recently a lot of learning different simulations where we help develop empathy for neurodivergent learners. And we also offer an introduction to 2E for teachers, as well as a variety of other workshops. Just contact hello@real2e.org to bring us to your school. Real became a nonprofit last year. We're very proud of that. All the work we do here, everything is offered for free. Thank you. So if you'd like to make a donation, if you found this event helpful, you can do so on our website. We appreciate your support. And I would like to now introduce Dr. Tasha Oswald, our speaker. Do you want to pin her while I introduce her, Callie? Dr. Oswald is a licensed psychologist and the founder and director of Open Doors Therapy and Neurodiversity School. She has specialized training in developmental and clinical psychology and cognitive neuroscience. With over 15 years experience working with teens and adults on the autism spectrum, she graduated with a PhD in psychology from the University of Oregon and went on to work for 5 years at the UC Davis Mind Institute, a world-renowned research and treatment center for neurodevelopmental disabilities. Thereafter, she continued to specialize in group therapy and other approaches for teens and adults on the autism spectrum. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I also very much appreciate every parent in attendance. I know how intense the month of May is for families. And the fact that you found this time, I really admire you being here. And also, I want to thank all the parents who will be listening later on and making the time in your life to do that as well. So I'll go ahead and I'll start sharing my presentation. Okay. Okay. And I also will open up the chat window. I'm hoping that this will be a very interactive topic and presentation. So today we'll be discussing accessing presence as a parent and bringing the energy of your presence to your relationship with your child. Okay, there it is. I have the chat window open, so I'm ready to go. Okay. So first, I just really wanted to talk about pressure, pressure, because often when we think of presence, right, it is very different than the experience of pressure. So, as a parent, you face so many different pressures in your life, right? There's the pressures of everyday functioning, getting your family to function, making sure your child gets to school on time or gets their homework done, right? So all these daily pressures. You also might have family pressures, different family members pressuring you on how you should be parenting, especially it might be coming from family members who don't understand what it's like to parent a twice exceptional child and all the unique challenges that can go along with that and the strengths and understanding how to balance that, right? Then, of course, as a parent, you experience child-related pressures too. So your child may be going into meltdown mode, or they're pushing back or resisting your influence or your feedback. And then, of course, I'm sure many of you experience school pressures, right? Thinking about all of you fearless parents going into the IEPs and working really hard to advocate for your child and the pressure or pushback you might get from the school system, right? And then many of you parents, in addition to all the work you do for your child and caring for your home, may also have a career outside of the home too, where you're often filled with many different work-related pressures like deadlines. So this is an everyday experience as a parent, is to feel these intense pressures. And then as a twice exceptional parent, so a parent who is parenting a child who's 2E, you have additional pressures that you're experiencing or facing, right? And I welcome you all, if everyone just wants to take a moment and just kind of notice what pressures came to my mind when this slide appeared in front of you. And you're welcome to put it in the chat window if you like. And again, this will be interactive. So as I see comments appear in the chat window, I'll be kind of sharing them aloud. But of course, I won't share anyone's name. Yeah. Yes. So a big pressure is to get your kids to succeed, right? To become independent, to be able to go off to college, to do well in an academic setting at that, higher education level. I love this one, summoning the patience of a saint. Yes, and that's actually a big topic of today, right? Another parent, I feel like I should be able to anticipate. Let me just hold on. Let me make my chat window bigger so comments don't disappear too quickly. Hold on one second. Okay. I feel like I should be able to anticipate my child's needs and support them, or to be able to absorb their emotions when they need me to, right? That's a lot of emotions you start to carry as a parent on behalf of your child. So start carrying some of their burden and internalizing that yourself. Yes. The pressure to help your child perform at age expected levels in all facets of their life. Mhm. Another parenting pressure is to try to help your child feel confident in school and become more independent, right? And then also pressures that your child is facing, in this case, pressures from others for my daughter to communicate in ways that aren't comfortable for her, which causes stress for us too, right? That's kind of touching upon almost masking or forcing a child to be other than they are, right? Yeah. The pressure to be everything to everyone and all at once too, right? And you hear that, and I hear there's very little left for yourself at the end of the day, right? There's so much you're giving to others and absorbing to care for others. And then pressure to get up to speed on everything for a newly diagnosed teen. Oh, get up to speed on everything, right? So for those parents out there who maybe your child was diagnosed more recently, right? So now you feel like you're trying to catch up. for years of not kind of understanding or knowing, right? Yeah. Then another person posted, pressure of helping my child manage in school and deciding the best option for college in a couple of years. That can be a tremendous source of pressure, right? Helping your child navigate that next step and figure out where they want to go and what will suit them well, right? What will align with them and who they are and how they've been wired. Helping build your son's self-esteem, right? Kind of noticing your child can be irrationally self-critical. And I would say that is so common with the twice exceptional students I work with, is that inner critic, that constant inner judge that's going on in their head. That's a whole nother talk I would be happy to talk about, right? But really, and that can lead to so many additional challenges in their life, like burnout, right? Overwhelm, meltdown, right? Let's see, pressure to be super mom who tries everything to help her kids and has no limitations of her own, right? Yeah. And pressure for my 2 ADHD child to fit into enrichment program expectations, right? Some of these expectations aren't designed well for a child with ADHD, right? Other learning differences or neurological differences. Another pressure to help your child be resilient. And then, of course, even if you figured out what works now and knowing what works now, knowing that that might not work in the future, and that constant pressure, it's ever changing, of how to help my child today, currently. And then someone said, I wish I could be as kind to myself as I am to others. Yeah. Thank you for that sentiment. And that is definitely a topic we'll tune into today. Really accessing that compassion, that kindness, that friendship you would offer to others, and tapping into it for yourself. Yeah. Oh. Okay. So thank you all for sharing some of the pressures you experience. And I'll just say one more as we move on. Another one came through, right? 14-year-old daughter who has a PDA profile, so pathological demand avoidance, and texts me every day, desperate to be picked up due to anxiety, right? What an intense pressure as a parent to feel. And I know so many parents, the second you hear the click of your text, right? The amount of triggering of anxiety you feel as a parent and the pressure to perform and save your child now. But now I want to shift from really this focus we've had on so many of the parent, pressures you're experiencing, to the key topic for today of presence. And I just want to invite everyone just to take a moment, breathe in this word presence, and just notice what comes to mind for you when you see this word, when you hear the word presence. Just tune into it. And when you feel ready, I welcome anyone to share in the chat window what comes to mind when you experience presence. No agenda. Listening, slowing down, stillness, no judgment. Not thinking about everything you need to do in the moment. Being in the moment. Freedom. Appreciating the here and now. Removing my own triggers from my past. Keeping in mind the past is the past and that the future hasn't happened yet. Snuggling. And someone commented that their mother-in-law is great at this. I recently did a breath class and it was awesome, but so hard to find that time each day. Another person wrote, as I think the word presence, unconditional love. And I'm going to bring up this next slide, spaciousness of presence. And I invite you to share what comes to mind when you see this, spaciousness of presence. I like that. Making space for being as we are. Mm, Spaciousness of presence, having a support system. Openness, open time, open heart, room to breathe. A protective bubble, the time and ease to be relaxed yet focused. How presence makes space, acknowledging thoughts and letting them move away. Meditation. Timelessness. Being in the present releases the pressures that come with time. Mhm. I like to say presence is the absence of pressure. Using the space so that we don't react, but connect and pause. And you can just see, feel, and hear the level of inner wisdom you all hold. And so I want to invite you all to take a moment and call to mind the time when you felt fully present with your child. Take a moment just to remember where you were with your child, what you were doing with your child, and you just felt that experience of presence with your child. And you may notice how much spaciousness you feel in that moment. And just also notice how much openness or curiosity you feel. Notice if there's any rigidity or inflexibility. And as you're remembering this time when you felt fully present with your child, just notice your ability to see possibility, opportunity, and hope. And notice your level of connection with your child in that moment. And notice how much appreciation or admiration you may have for your child or yourself in that moment. Notice what it was like to be with your child and your ability to go at their pace and to honor their wiring. And as you recall this memory of feeling fully present with your child, just notice what it's like for you. And I invite you all to share in the chat window what you noticed. Joyful, at peace, released from stress. Like time doesn't matter, realizing every day is precious. Calm, calm and acceptance. Tension melting away, proud of who my daughter truly is. Relaxed, unconditional love. My child becomes more engaged, just noticing engagement. Feeling connected, connected with your child. And thank you for sharing in such lovely sentiments. And I want to share with you this image. And I want to ask, do any of these inner resources that are listed here emerge when you feel fully present with your child? And I'll just say the resources out loud. Do you notice creativity emerge within you, or curiosity? Do you notice courage or calm, compassion or connectedness, clarity or confidence? That's what I call the 8 C's. Do you notice persistence or playfulness, perspective, presence, or patience? That's what I call the 5 P's. Mhm. And so one group member said they notice connectedness. They notice feeling connected with their child when they're feeling present. Playfulness and confidence, another group member shared. Another group member said connected and playful. And as you're all sharing, I can feel the energy, right? The warmth It just feels yummy. You want to be in this energy and that playfulness. There's fun here. Another group member said, when they're present with their child, they feel more connected and patient. And I'll invite group members to reflect on this question. How do these inner resources we just covered, the 8 C's and the 5 P's, how do they help you in challenging moments with your child? So when you're able to tap into one or some of these different resources you have as a parent, how does this help you in these challenging moments with your child? Mhm. One parent said compassion is helpful. Another parent said when you're connected, you can talk through difficult things. What came to my mind was safety. And was that safe zone to talk and to share and be heard and seen, listened to. Another parent said when they connect with these inner resources, it helps them not lose hope. Another parent said, I try to look at why something might be challenging from my child's perspective, and it gives me more compassion. I appreciate that comment. It also helps us notice how when we tap into one of these inner resources, often then connects us to another one. And how wonderful before we know it, we're dotting more than one of these, right? And bringing in that energy. Another parent said that when they connect with these inner resources, there is more trust between them and their child. Another parent said these inner resources help them have empathy for their child and their challenges, and that can help prevent escalations. Another parent said, these inner resources help me have fun with my child, remind me, remind each other what we enjoy about one another. I love that. I hear the balance that comes from this, connecting with these inner resources. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to share too, right? That as parents, we can sometimes feel disconnected from these inner resources in the moment, right? That happens. It can especially happen when we're feeling tired or exhausted. I heard all the super parents, right? Just in the earlier comments about the pressures, all that you're doing, often going unrecognized, unappreciated, no less. Your tireless efforts to help your child, your family, your community, right? When you're feeling too much pressure or worry, right? Your child is pushing your buttons. It's those moments that we might lose touch with these inner resources and our inner wisdom. But bear in mind, it doesn't mean they don't exist, right? It's finding that tether back to these resources that you all hold. And so, what I would like to do is explore with you all a strategy to help you connect back to your inner resources in those challenging moments, right? And so I'll invite you all first to think of a challenging moment so that we then can utilize this strategy. And so a simple one, right, in terms of challenging, is just calling back to time. a mind when you felt like your child was pushing your buttons. All parents have had this experience. You certainly are not alone. And so, as you think about this experience, right, just take a moment and notice where you were with your child when this happened, when they were pressing your buttons. Okay. Notice who was around, what was the setting, what was your child doing or saying? Was there pressure on you in that moment? Which probably there was, right? And just calling back to mind all that was happening for you when your child was pressing your buttons. For some of you too, as you think about this, it might be easier to remember like a time when you made a request of your child and they were giving you pushback, right? Maybe you made a request for them to finish their homework or do a chore, like put their plate away, right? Or get ready for school, right? And you see the eyes roll or maybe the sigh, whatever is happening, right, from your child. That's just that, ooh, push the button. Okay. I invite you all just to now notice what happens inside for you, right? What parts of you got activated? There might be that part that comes up that just, frustrated, right? Another part that's like, not again, right? It's feeling kind of deflated. Maybe another part that's just feeling hurt by your child is kind of pushing back. Maybe they say or do something unkind in the moment. Parents are noticing internally what's happening, like their legs starting to get very jittery. Yeah. Chest tightening, right? Feeling anxious. Our body's speaking to us in these moments, letting us know hey, this isn't going well. We're not feeling good about how this is playing out, right? Feeling the weight on your shoulders, your jaw clenching. Yeah, so you really can sense like all these different internal experiences you're having. And usually it's not just one experience, right? Right? There's multiple parts to all of us that's getting activated in this moment. As parents, there is so much you can relate to with each other around this topic, right? And as you look at the list of different experiences or parts that are coming up, I'm sure there's a lot of me too moments you're having. Other parents, so they might be feeling helpless, right? Or powerless in that moment. I haven't heard yet a parent say something along the lines of wanting to just go hide and not deal with it, right? Energy drained by 8 a.m. in the morning. Uh-huh. Another person sharing, they notice they start talking too much and too fast. Can't stop verbalizing my frustration when I get stressed, right? There's that part of you that's like, I got to do this. I want my child to know, right? You feel that pressure. Mhm. And so when we notice these different experiences coming up, they can be really hijacking, right? You can really feel it in your body. It really can take over, right? Another parent said feeling paralyzed, trying to get something accomplished without making the situation worse, right? So hard in the moment, right? Feeling paralyzed about what you can do to make the situation better. Oh, one parent said, I can hear my frustrated child yelling for me now, and he won't stop. Yeah, we can feel the pressure that each one of you holds as a parent. Yeah. And let's just take a moment if group members want to share a word of compassion, which is different from advice, right? Or feedback, right? That sense of empathy or me too, or I can relate. And I know many parents too can feel parent guilt later. Does anyone ever have that experience? Right? And so one parent saying, you're doing your best you can. We are always human. Mhm. And one parent noticing that challenge, that paralysis that can come up with their child, it's a whole different level than they ever experience with their neurotypical child. Mhm. So these are hard moments. They're very hard moments as parents to encounter. Yes, right? I love this. A parent said, it feels hard because it is hard. It is. It really is. Another parent shared, I remember other moments and know this difficult moment is temporary. I know it is just part of the puzzle, not the whole picture. Yeah. And what I hear too in that is that tether back to perspective, right? One of those 5 Ps, being able to remember there's a whole picture, remembering your whole child. Because in those moments, we can feel like we're really struggling directly with one of our child's parts, right? That obstinate part that says, no, I'm not going to do what you say, mom or dad, right? Which can become suddenly a tug of war, right? Being able to step back and see kind of the whole picture, gain that perspective. Sometimes it can be really hard to tether back to your inner resources. So I thought we could take some time now and explore one strategy for that. Mhm. Oh, I love this comment. Another parent wrote, noticing if my child can break down for a second, so can I. And it is okay for both of us. Mending is possible. Yeah, I love that. Right? Perspective of again, mending is possible, right? Repair is possible. Grace, forgiveness, all of that is possible. And it's nice too for your child to see you're human, right? It can be pretty hard when they see Supermom all the time, right? That's a high expectation to meet, right? Being human and going into repair, that is some of the most powerful stuff you can ever do with your child to prepare them for relationships in life. I'm going to shift into this strategy. Oh, I love this last comment. I can model how to fall apart. Yes, you can. right? That is a great thing to model. It is such an important thing to model. You can fall apart, right? And then you can reconnect with who you are fully, right? Mhm. So for this strategy of reconnecting back to our inner resources, it's about creating a sacred space for presence. Again, presence can kind of be a doorway to accessing so many of your other inner resources. Okay. And so I'm going to invite you all to do a visualization exercise with me. I hope everyone's okay with that. To kind of have a thumbs up. Does that sound good to people? Okay. I love the comment. One parent said, a sacred space must include chocolate and coffee. I think my sacred space would definitely include those, especially chocolate. Chocolate and wine. And so that is the great thing is you know yourself best and you know what you need, right? And what you need in your sacred space. And someone's going to be right back because they need chocolate. Good for you. Take care of yourself. I love it. All right. And so I'll invite you all now just to start to visualize a space that connects you with a sense of presence, right? And one person shared that having a space with water, to be in water, helps create a sacred space, right? I'm very similar. I love saying, I like being more in water than on land, right? Really, where you feel like you are who you are. You feel really connected internally in this space. And try to begin to visualize a space that really helps connect back to all of your amazing inner resources, like calm and patience, curiosity and perspective, compassion and playfulness. And this is a space where all the parts of yourself are welcome, every part of you, right? Parts that can get frustrated with your child, right? Parts that can be playful with your child, right? Parts that can go into paralysis, not know what to do or feel helpless, right? Parts that maybe can feel parent guilt or kind of beat you up, your own inner critic, right? Parts that can be strong advocates for your child. There's so much to you, right? All these parts, imagine them being welcome to this space. And I have some imagery here on the screen. Again, pick your own space that feels right for your system. And you're welcome to even soften your gaze or close your eyes as you envision and bring something to mind. You might visualize a cozy fireplace where you feel the warmth of the fire. Or you might envision that comfy couch where you can stretch out or cuddle under a soft blanket. You might envision more of a playful space, like a swing set, right? And it's just that expansive green lawn that just goes everywhere. You know, you could run around and play in. You might envision maybe being by the lakeside, seated around, just enjoying the view, smelling the fresh air, feeling that gentle breeze. I'll give you all just a moment to quietly connect inward. Just find a peaceful place, that space that just feels sacred for you to be who you are, and all parts of you are welcome. Just notice as you visualize this sacred space, how it feels to you. You can just breathe in the energy of this space and just be present in the sacred space you've created. And this again is a space where you can really welcome and honor all parts of yourself. And as you may reflect back on that memory you had where your child was pressing your button and you notice just those different parts of yourself come up, see if you can just take a moment now and welcome those to this sacred space. They all have a seat here, and there is enough space for every part of you. And just allow all parts of you to feel your presence and soak in the energy of this space. And this is your sacred space, and your parts can return here whenever they need to be nourished, whenever they just feel like they're just disconnected from you. They can come back here and feel your presence, feel connected to your inner resources. And just before we wrap up, just take a moment to just savor this experience of being here. When you feel ready, just begin to gently shift your attention back outward again. Take a moment just to kind of integrate your experience. And I welcome anyone to just share in the chat window what that was like for you. Hmm. One group member said, I didn't want to leave. Another group member said they felt protective. Hmm. Another group member said they felt energy and strength. Another group member said, when I invited that triggering experience into my sacred space, it was no longer triggering me. Yeah. Another group member said, I felt my body resisting letting go of some tension. It is hard to make that choice to truly relax. Mhm. Yeah. And I do want to just say, too, that resistance is welcome, right? It's welcome there, too. Yeah. Another group member said restorative. I felt restorative. Thank you. The baby steps, right? Of resisting letting go of some of that tension, because you all carry so much pressure, right? And underlying it all is this deep desire to really care and love for your child and others in your life. Another person said they tapped into a younger version of themselves and felt less cynical and more hope, possibly more childlike. That's lovely. And as you all just notice and reflect what this experience was like, I'm going to just ask you all to notice if any of these qualities were emerging as you created the sacred space. Again, these qualities being the 8 C's and the 5 P's. Yeah, one parent noticed they felt calm and patience in the sacred space. And they commented which they usually are not. Right? How nice now you have this space where you can feel that way. Another parent said they felt perspective and clarity as they were in the sacred space. And one thing I did want to share, now that you have this visualized space for yourself, this is a space you can return to as needed, right? At the end of that really hard day, maybe when you're taking a shower, just to kind of rejuvenate, right? Maybe you just notice a button's getting pressed, right? Taking a moment to reconnect to some of these inner resources. And just remembering too, we're all human, right? Again, that connects back to the sense of perspective, right? And compassion that you can have for yourself and for others. And so I want to thank you all for being present today for this talk. I really deeply appreciate your comments and for sharing and connecting with each other. And I'll just bring up this final slide. It's just contact information if anyone ever would like to reach out to me. And our website is listed here, opendoorstherapy.com. I also have a newsletter. I write blogs about twice a month, and the newsletter goes out, it announces the new blog and also provides different resources. And so, and sometimes we write blogs specifically for parents. Sometimes we write it for autistic adults. Sometimes we write it for employers, hoping we can create more inclusive and neurodiversity affirming environments. And I also wanted to point out too that I will be launching Neurodiversity School. And this will be a space with online communities and e-courses. And it's both for neurodivergent individuals to connect and connect back to their inner resources like we did today, and to connect with each other and just find supportive, affirming community. And also there will be opportunities for parents too, because it's so important for parents to find their own tribe that's non-judgmental and supportive. And so I do want to thank you all for having me, and to also the creators of Real for creating this safe space for parents. So thank you so much. And I'm sorry, my lights for some reason are dimming in here, so I'm like disappearing in the room. If you all want to give me a minute, I'm going to just flicker my lights. I'll be right back. So hopefully they'll turn back on.
And if you guys have questions that you would like Dr. Oswald to answer about anything related to neurodiversity, your kids, yourself, your pressures, anything at all, please post them in the chat. We have some questions from the RSVPs that I will ask if no one here asks, but you can ask about any topic.
And should I take down my
Sure.
slideshow? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing it now. My lights just completely went off. I don't know what is they completely went black. I don't know if the power went out. I'm not sure what's going on. But thankfully my computer monitor is giving me enough light. I'll just increase. Sorry, I'm mostly a talking head at this point.
It's okay. So we have a question from the audience. Do you do this sort of visualization with children? Do you teach them how to do this? And do you have any tips for how parents can pass this along to kids?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, we do this kind of work. So in my private practice, we typically work with adolescents, though I know many individuals who work with children, and even young children can do this. And in fact, they can really enjoy this too, because it's creative, it can be playful, right? So we're tapping into a lot of their inner resources that they have as a child. And I've worked in the past a lot with younger children too. And it's really remarkable. You can feel them connecting with their own inner resources, their resilience, through these different visualization activities. Let me look at the question again. And once they've kind of found, for instance, a sacred space, they often will go back to it in their mind. And I have kids that will naturally do this. Sometimes in session, I'll invite them to go back to it, right? And once they have this, you can invite them to do this during a challenging moment. So let's just say your child had a really difficult day, and they've maybe shared their sacred space with you, you have a sense for what it's like. You can really just guide them back to it, really, and connect back to that energy. And as they bring in that energy, they likely will start to notice possibilities they couldn't see before, right? Because like they get just so focused on just one aspect or one part of themselves, they can like lose sight or lose perspective. And so I do find too, kids can come up with amazing problem solving strategies, like once they get reconnected back to their inner resources. Let's see. In terms of tips on how parents can pass this along to kids, what I would say is when you do it for yourself, right, then it's in you, it's in your being, you know it, right? You have that internal experience. it is so much easier for you then to do it with your child. So I would just invite you all to do these sorts of things with yourself, and then you can extend them to your child. And you can do it depends how your child is and what kind of family system you have. You could literally do it around the dinner table, right? Or on the drive home from school. I mean, you can just find these like moments. And it can be kind of neat too when you do it with multiple family members, because then you get to hear their own spaces too. And that's kind of fun. And then your child gets to hear like everyone can do this. So everyone has these inner resources too, right? And it's just, it can be really playful. Like for instance, I have one individual who has a barbecue, and that's what goes on inside, right? And so kind of when they have a hard day and like they got kind of triggered and these different parts of themselves came up, they all go hang out at the barbecue, right? And so it's like really, I love that visual. It's so fun for me. And imagine like your child getting to hear that. And so you really are teaching them strategies for life too. And what I like is that you're also honoring, acknowledging that they have inner resources as well, right?
We have a question now. My teen has been isolated for over 3 years and he refuses any type of therapy or help. Do you have an elevator pitch for what they can possibly gain from therapy?
Yeah, that is really difficult. It's very, very difficult. Um, Oftentimes, when we see this, there's at least one, if not numerous reasons behind why they're resistant to therapy, right? Many times for teens or children, it's there's a lot of shame about being different, in quotes, being weird, right? And they think this is just another example of how they're weird or different, that they now need therapy, right? So, what I would say is when you can try to find a community that's supportive, sometimes that's the way to help shift them away from that internal shame. And then they may become more open to therapy. And so, for many of your children probably all have their own unique interests. So, anytime you can find community around their interests, the better, right? As that interest carries a lot of self esteem for them. It's something they feel good at, they enjoy, they love. And I know a lot of adolescents I work with feel like their interests are unique. And then sometimes they feel like they're different and weird because it's an unusual interest. And so it can be really powerful when they connect with other peers who have a shared interest. And sometimes that means you can't find someone in your local community and they do have to do something that's more at a national level or global level. There's virtually almost always people who will share that interest. And like just finding that community can be really helpful. So I can say you could do an elevator pitch, but I do find often what can be helpful is helping them find a sense of connection and community first. But in terms of elevator pitch too, I say, parents, you wear so many hats. I say sometimes leave that hat for the therapist and let the therapist do the pitch if you can. I know a lot of therapists will do free consultations and meet with a child briefly or on Zoom. And that can be an opportunity for the pitch. And I'd also say the pitch probably relates to the therapeutic style of the therapist. So it might be beneficial to speak to whatever therapist you're considering and ask them like what they would recommend or suggest.
Thank you. That's so helpful. So if other people have questions, feel free to post in the chat. Oh, Hallie, did you want to say something?
Well, I was going to pick one from that had come up earlier in the session, and then was also something that someone posted about or related that someone posted about when they RSVP'd. And it was really about any suggestions you have for parents whose children are just getting a diagnosis, whether that be when the child is 4 or 5 or when the child's a teenager. So it might be slightly different advice, but I think we had a few people whose children had most recently received autism diagnoses, and there's just a lot of stress and pressure and tension that can come when you get the diagnosis and you get like the laundry list of things you should be doing, and then just trying to decide what intervention services to use or not use, because there's a lot of conflicting advice from the medical world, actually autistic people, and it's a lot. So what advice do you have for parents who are facing that?
Thank you. I think it can be really helpful for parents to listen and lean into the autistic community. There are many autistic advocates that share about their childhood experiences and really what has helped them find a sense how to be neurodiversity affirming to themselves and find neurodiversity affirming environments or people or communities. And I think ultimately, if underlying, there's always this goal of how do I affirm my child for like who they are in terms of how they've been wired, and figure out a way I can honor and support that. I think there is a pretty strong bias in most cultures, right, towards, we might use the word ableism, right? Kind of this bias to act in quotes neurotypical. And it can be really empowering to help your child identify, understand, and value neurodiversity. And that can not only just be whatever their identified diagnosis, which is autistic, but all forms of neurodiversity, and understanding the variety, and that there are so many people in this world who are neurodivergent. And I think that also can help remove a sense of shame, because a lot of the mental health issues that I deal with, it's not because they're specifically autistic. I specialize in autism. It's because of shame. And that's led to depression, anxiety, etc. And so a big part is really building up their identity, their community, and their understanding, their sense of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-compassion. And I think we brought up earlier too, I think one of the parents talked about kind of their own inner criticism, right? Or being hard on themselves. It's so common in neurodivergent children to be super hard on themselves, really hard. And so helping them find balance in the way they view themselves so that they're not so hard on themselves is really important for themselves throughout life. Oh, that's great. Thanks, Kelly, for noting. It's a list of Facebook groups that are hosted by autistic leaders.
I think that's a really good question, because it's so scary when you first get a diagnosis and you're literally given a list of like all these therapies to change your child, told they will never be okay if you don't do all these therapies, and you lose sight of the beautiful parts of, the way your child is. So one of the questions that came in the RSVPs was, my worries about how my child is going to survive in a world that moves so fast and is seemingly ruthless. I support her walking her own path, but that does not erase the deep-seated fear I have for her and her future. I assume many parents share this fear. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how we can face these fears and do something more positive with that energy.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I do welcome parents who also can relate to just share that in the chat window. But what I would say, that fear of the fast moving culture, the fast moving expectations, the high pressure, right? This often is kind of counter to a neurodivergent nervous system, the way individuals are wired. And they do often, again, work specifically with autistic individuals and ADHD commonly, and they often do need slowness, right? They need those moments to be, right? And that's one of the reasons why I create this sacred space with my clients, so that they know that they can find that space, that presence, because the world doesn't feel that way. It feels fast, it feels rushed, it feels unforgiving, it feels harsh, it feels cruel. There's a lot that they will encounter. And we can't control that world they're always going to face. But what we can do is help them find that inner space and seek it when they need it, and to help them identify when they need it and be able to go there. Does that make sense? People?
Yeah, to give people resources to understand. I mean, we talk about this a lot, understand what you need and how to advocate for the environment that works for you.
Exactly. And I work with a lot of autistic adults, and they basically spent their life masking and ignoring their needs to people please or to fit in, right? And then they end up burning out, they end up going on medical leave from their jobs, right? Their social battery is completely depleted, right? And they start to learn to tune into themselves. That's a lot of the work we do. We help them learn to speak up for their needs, notice their needs. And that's something that children can do. And so for all of you who have, children who are twice exceptional and neurodivergent, that's some of the work that can start happening now. It's not always easy because neurodivergent children, sometimes it's hard for them to connect to their inner experience or their emotional experience. And so it can help as parents to label it for them. And so one of the ways is model it, use emotion language, describe when you're feeling a certain way, right? And helping give language to your child when they're having a strong reaction, to try to help label it for them and ask them if that feels right. So our role isn't to tell them how they feel, but to give them options. Does this feel right to you? Does this make sense to you? So they can start to eventually label it themselves and notice it themselves. Once they can recognize it in themselves, that's when they can start doing something about it, right? And so that they don't just get to an escalated point and break. We want them to start notice when they're starting to escalate. What can you do for yourself now? You're getting overwhelmed now. What's bothering you in this environment? What can you do right now for yourself? Okay, these lights are bothering you. What can we do about that right now? Right.
So Dr. Oswald, another person had said, in terms of that self-regulation, there are a lot of teens who will say the only way that they can self-regulate or relax is watching YouTube videos for hours at a time. And I think that's hard because we want them to be able to self-regulate, but it feels like hours at a time isn't the greatest. And I'm thinking about that question about like Asperger experts and defense mode and that kind of thing. But how do you advise families who have kids who use videos or video games to self-regulate?
Well, one thing I would say, if they're needing to do it for hours, it's a really big sign that during the day, whether it be at school or whatever environment they were in, that they weren't taking care of themselves. So they're completely spent and burnt out. And now they need to spend the rest of the evening taking care of themselves. Right. But that strategy, it's usually not going to be enough to nourish them and replenish them. So now they're in this like losing cycle of never like getting fully replenished. And so I think this goes back to helping them find out during the day where are their little micro moments where they can care for themselves in different ways, right? Because at school, for instance, if your child attends school, they can't video game or they can't YouTube, right? But what are the things they can do? And so then those, as they start to realize how they can care for themselves throughout the day, then they might not need to spend 7 hours straight, like on YouTube. And there might be the option to go for a walk with the family dog or mom or dad, right? And so there becomes more possibility as they start to increase their energy. I think also too, it's important to understand and know your child's social battery. I actually have a blog on social battery. I'm happy to share some resources if you want to email them. There's this nice image too that you can show your child, and it helps give them language. And then they can talk about, hey, I'm feeling really depleted right now or discharged. I need to charge up my social battery, right? And then there's something really powerful about honoring that in your child and that they need that. But helping them be able to speak up for that sooner before they get completely depleted, right? So that's our goal, is to keep them from constantly getting depleted.
Yeah, didn't a kid recently told us that what'd you say? I'm done peopling for the day.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
My child
Um,
says sometimes, Mom, you've reached your word limit.
Uh-huh. Yeah. See, and that's great. And that's when you're like, thank you. Right? It's like, I heard you. Thanks for taking care of yourself and letting me know what you need. Right. So those are great times to honor that, especially if they're doing it in like a respectful way. If they say it in a disrespectful way, then that's something over time one can work with, right? But them being able to advocate for their needs is so powerful.
So this is one that comes up a lot, is people talking, and I'll put it also in the chat, but people talking about how can you feel good about yourself when you struggle to make and maintain friendships?
Yeah.
They're saying that
Yeah.
next time he's in middle school, he hasn't met his people. It's heartbreaking for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think this kind of goes back to if there's an opportunity to find something your child does really love and help them connect to a community around that topic. Because right now, like, especially in late elementary school and middle school and high school, there's a lot of identity formation happening, and they're starting to create beliefs about themselves, right, and their identity. Right. And that's when you start to hear your child say things like, I don't fit in, I'm different, I'm weird, right? I'm a weirdo, no one will ever like me. And then it starts going in these extreme statements of I'll never, it'll never happen, right? And so the more you can find a community, the better. And it's not always easy. It can be really hard to find a community that works for your child. And I just want to acknowledge that it is not easy often. And just trying to cue into what that community is. The other thing I would say too, depending on your child, what they need might be different than what their peers need in terms of how much time they need to spend with peers or what they want to talk about. So I think that's also really important, is like tuning into what it is that they're wanting at the age they're at. And I do just also really want to acknowledge it is really heartbreaking to see your child like suffering and struggling to make friends.
And someone just posted in the chat, there's an existential loneliness that I think 2E kids and adults feel at a deeper level. It is just sad and just is.
One thing I would say, I do a lot of group therapy, and it can be really powerful for 2E individuals, because it's finally, they're not alone anymore, whatever we're talking about. And again, with our groups, they're specialized for 2E individuals. So the topics we discuss, they relate to, right? And so when they share something, there's other people in the room that are saying me too, right? And that is life changing. It is transformational. And I work with a lot of adults who have a late life diagnosis. So they've spent the last 30, 40 years, right, feeling alien, feeling different, feeling like an outcast. And so many of them are like, this is the first time I've ever felt like I belong.
What age do you typically start those groups at?
We do work with later high school for those groups. Some individuals in the community do work with younger children too. So, that's something to look into. And are there group therapy sessions in person or virtual? Right. So, sorry, I just saw that and read it out loud. So, our sessions are virtual, which is also one of the reasons why we aren't working with younger teens or children, because I do think sometimes they need a more stimulating environment. But again, it doesn't always have to be a therapy group. It can be like, my child loves horses and I want to get them connected with another group of peers that like horses too.
Tasha, we got quite a couple of questions in the RSVP about how do we handle the pressure or stress that comes when we're seeing our child and what and having concerns, but either their teachers or their IEP team thinks they're just fine. The child is coming home and we're either seeing them, fall apart because they've been working so hard and just the stress of the day, or the child says school is really hard or terrible, but the school team just sees it so differently. And I think too, like, how do we think about regulating our emotions when we have to have those conversations?
Right. Okay. So there's the part that you said at the end about as a parent regulating your own emotions with your child, or you mean in the IEP section or session
In the IEP, like when we know we're going
meeting?
into those stressful conversations, like that's a big part of the journey is the conversations, and those can be a whole other level of stress for parents.
Yeah. I think I'll start with the first question. I think it probably relates partially to the child's age. But I think anytime you can help your child speak up for themselves, and sometimes it's not like in a meeting, because that can be very hard for children, even teens. But it could be writing something, it could be drawing something and sharing it with the group, the IEP team, right? Again, like social battery, helping them speak up for what their social battery is like at the end of the school day or at the end of math, which is really hard for them, right? And so it can be so helpful when there's something coming directly from the child that as a parent, you're then kind of backing up, right? And I just want to say I admire all of you because IEPs can be so challenging. Schools can give you so much pushback. It is often not an easy process. And so I just want to like acknowledge that that's a real challenge that you all face in terms of like going into the IEP process or a meeting. It can be very dysregulating to be in those meetings, right? It can create rage. You can become irate, so angry at what the school is doing. And of course, you all love your children. That's why you're here today. And you fiercely love them. And so Mama Bear, Papa Bear is going to come out in those meetings, right? And that makes complete sense. And so what I would say is like some of the activities we'll do with parents are these sorts of visualizations to like prepare them. And they also start to get to know those parts of themselves that are most likely to get really triggered or activated in those meetings and do some work with those specific parts so that they are able to stand in a more regulated state and still speak up and advocate, because we never want to hold a parent's voice back, right?
Yeah, so that's why people often recommend bringing in someone with you.
Yes.
Because it's very hard when it's your child to stay calm. Someone told me that you, even if it's a friend, therapist, anyone you have that can speak on. Yeah.
I love that. And I also think too, if there's an object you can bring with you, it might be something you hold in your pocket, right? And like before you go in the meeting, you really endow it with properties, right? You might you might do a sacred ritual around it, right? That connects to all the people that love your child, right? They might hold that too, and they bring that energy to it. It could be something simple like a rock. It doesn't necessarily have to be this meaningful object, but it carries meaning with it. And when you're holding it in your hand, you feel the energy and strength of your tribe that was connected to it, for instance. Or you've endowed it with your own, right, qualities too, of like your 8 C's and 5 P's that we covered going into a meeting. And you're connecting back to your perspective, your courage, your confidence, your clarity as a parent, your compassion. So those are just some of the things you can do in advance to prepare for those meetings.
Well, this has been, I think, like a very calming and helpful session for everyone here that was able to make it tonight. I know that I feel like in a new calm place myself, and appreciate all the wisdom that you've brought to us tonight, Dr. Oswald. And thank you for all of your service to our community and helping our twice exceptional kids and their parents.
Well,
To
thank you so
travel on this journey together. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate and honor you and for all the hard work you do in pulling this group together.
Thank you. We're glad to do it. It's our honor and pleasure. I'm going to stop